All right, I want everyone to pull their car over for a second or put down whatever you're doing because we need to talk about the total collapse of common sense in our federal court system. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know my opinion on this. You know I look at things through the lens of the street, the real world, not some pristine ivory tower library. And what just came out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is, without a doubt, some of the worst, absolute worst, most dangerous nonsense I have ever seen put on paper.
From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth.
Get a load of this headline. Hiring a hitman to commit murder is not always a crime of violence. Let that sink in. If you or I or any sane human being with a pulse heard that a guy paid $40,000 in cash to have two of his business associates brutally executed, we'd call that a crime of violence. One victim was beaten to death with a tire jack, the other was shot 6 times inside his own home. It is cold-blooded, pre-planned, vicious violence. But not according to the brilliant legal minds on the Ninth Circuit bench. No, to them, it's just a game of computer syntax. Here's what actually happened behind the curtain, folks. The judges are hiding behind this hyper-technical, robotic legal rule called the categorical approach. Under this rule, when a court reviews a conviction, the judges are strictly forbidden from looking at what the criminal actually did. Think about how insane that is. They have to put on a blindfold, pretend the tire jack and the 6 gunshots don't exist, and look only at the bare text of the law. They looked at the federal solicitation statute 18 USC section 373, which requires an underlying crime of violence. Then they looked at the murder for hire statute, section 1958, which bumps up the penalty if death results. And here is where the common sense completely exits the room. The judges noticed that Congress didn't explicitly write the words intent to cause right next to the phrase if death results. So what do the judges do? They invent a wild, imaginary, hypothetical scenario. They say, well, what if someone hired a guy to run a scam across state lines and on the way the driver gets into a freak car accident and someone dies? That's an accidental death. So technically, the text of the murder for hire law could cover an accident. And because of that one imaginary baseline scenario, they ruled that the entire law fails the test. The text doesn't perfectly match. Therefore, paying a hitman to execute 2 people is no longer categorically a crime of violence, and the separate solicitation convictions get tossed onto the street. It is pure, unadulterated nonsense. We have built a legal system that is so utterly obsessed with the mechanics of grammar, so buried in academic theory, that it has completely divorced itself from the reality of the crime. It treats the law like a game of tech support instead of a system designed to protect public safety and hold violent predators accountable. The defendant in this case isn't getting out of prison, he's serving life on other counts, but that's not the point. The point is the precedent. The point is the mindset. When our highest courts are forced to play pretend in a vacuum while real victims are lying in a morgue, the system isn't working. It's broken. But hey, that's just my opinion. I want to hear yours. Is the law completely blind, or has it just lost its mind? Here's where I land on this. A justice system that can look at a man who paid $40,000 to have 2 human beings killed and then conclude that the underlying conduct somehow fails a legal test for a crime of violence has become dangerously disconnected from the people it is supposed to serve. And spare me the lecture about how the defendant is already serving life, so none of this really matters. It matters because appellate decisions become precedent. Precedent becomes the argument in the next courtroom, and the next defendant may not have a stack of other convictions keeping him behind bars. This is how the system gets hollowed out. not necessarily through one massive decision that throws open every prison door, but through years of increasingly absurd legal doctrines, technical loopholes, imaginary hypotheticals, and judicial decisions that ordinary Americans couldn't explain with a straight face if you gave them a week to try. Now, there is another uncomfortable truth here. Congress deserves some of the blame. If federal law is written so poorly that judges can plausibly reach a conclusion this ridiculous, then Congress needs to fix the law immediately. Write it clearly, define the elements, close the loophole, make the intent unmistakable. Because separation of powers matters. Judges should interpret the law, not rewrite it to produce the result we happen to want. But the judiciary also cannot become a legal laboratory where common sense is treated like an embarrassing inconvenience. The Constitution guarantees due process. It does not require stupidity. It does not require judges to pretend they don't know the difference between an accidental car crash and paying a professional killer to execute two people. And it certainly does not require the American people to quietly accept a justice system where everyone can see exactly what happened, everyone understands exactly what happened, and yet somehow the legal system arrives at a conclusion that defies the plain meaning of the English language. 2 men are dead. One was beaten to death with a tire jack. Another was shot 6 times in his own home. Those aren't hypotheticals. Those aren't law school exam questions. Those were human beings. And somewhere along the way, our legal system has become far more comfortable debating imaginary accidents than confronting the actual violence inflicted on real victims. That's what infuriates me. Public safety matters. Accountability matters. The rights of defendants matter. And yes, the Constitution matters above all of it because the Constitution is the framework that protects all of those things. But justice requires balance. When the law becomes so detached from reality that hiring a hitman can be legally separated from violence, we aren't protecting the Constitution. We're making a mockery of common sense. Congress needs to clean up these statutes. The courts need to remember that their decisions have consequences far beyond the pages of a legal opinion. And the American people need to start paying a hell of a lot more attention to what is happening inside these appellate courts. Because the next case may not involve a defendant who's already serving life. The next technicality may have a very real consequence. And the next victim won't give a damn how clever the legal argument sounded from behind the bench. Justice without the rule of law is dangerous. But the rule of law without common sense isn't justice either. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person we built this channel for. Left Coast News exists to cut through the noise and bring you straightforward analysis of the stories shaping Washington, the Pacific Northwest, and beyond. If you found this video valuable, please subscribe and follow us wherever you get your content, including YouTube, Rumble, Brighteon, BitChute, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you'd like to help support independent journalism, you can also join us on Patreon. Patreon is free for now. You'll find the link in the description below. And if you think this story matters, share it with your friends and family. That's one of the biggest ways you can help this channel grow. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you agree with this analysis, or do you see it differently? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching Left Coast News.